5 more killers, 5 more brains that broke in very different ways. Serial killers fascinate us because they break every human rule, empathy, morality, even biology itself. But today, we'll go into the minds of murderers who looked ordinary on the outside but operated with chilling medical precision and delusion. Brace yourselves and let's dive right in. Number 5, John Wayne Gacy. The Double Life. Chicago suburbs, 1970s, a respected contractor, a neighborhood volunteer, even a clown at children's birthday parties. That twisted man was John Wayne Gacy. A figure so seemingly ordinary, he earned the trust of parents, employers, and even politicians. But beneath his home, police would uncover one of the most horrifying crime scenes in American history. The remains of 29 young men and boys buried in the crawl space. From a medical standpoint, most of Gacy's victims died from ligature strangulation, a slow, controlled form of asphyxiation that compresses the airway and blood vessels of the neck. Victims often develop tiny pinpoint hemorrhages in the eyes called petechiae, along with signs of prolonged oxygen deprivation. Within just a few minutes, irreversible brain injury can begin. Psychologically, Gacy represented one of the most unsettling examples of compartmentalization. In medicine, physicians sometimes witness devastating trauma or death, then still have to go home and be present with their families. Gacy demonstrated the darkest possible distortion of that ability. From a psychiatric perspective, experts have described Gacy's behavior as being consistent with the narcissistic personality traits combined with an extreme need for dominance and psychological control. His crimes weren't driven by uncontrolled rage, but by calculated authority over his victims. Historical psyche evals also described a childhood marked by abuse, humiliation, and possible head trauma, factors that may have affected development of the orbital frontal cortex, a region involved in impulse control, decision-making, and empathy. Culturally, though, he became the blueprint for killer clown archetype, a reminder that sometimes evil doesn't hide in darkness, it paints on a smile. Number 4, Albert Fish. The Pain Paradox, New York City, 1930s. An elderly grandfather with a quiet demeanor, the kind of man you might pass on the street without a second thought. Behind that ordinary appearance was Albert Fish. He targeted children, lured them away with promises of work or gifts, and later confessed to crimes so horrific that portions of his letters were considered too graphic to be read aloud in court. From a neurological and psychiatric perspective, Fish's history was extraordinarily complex. Historical records described lifelong hallucinations, religious delusions, compulsive behaviors, and what today would likely be recognized as severe paraphilic disorders. He also reportedly sustained head injuries during childhood, raising the possibility of dysfunction within the prefrontal cortex. Researchers have also speculated that abnormalities within the brain's pain and reward pathways may have contributed to his behavior. Normally, pain serves as one of the body's most important survival signals, but in rare psychiatric conditions, those circuits can become profoundly distorted, allowing pain, fear, or suffering to become psychologically reinforcing instead of something to avoid. From an emergency medicine standpoint, victims subjected to prolonged physical abuse often present with far more than isolated injuries. Physicians look for patterns, injuries in different stages of healing, evidence of repeated trauma, signs of malnutrition or neglect, and psychological distress that can be just as significant as physical wounds. For forensic psychiatrists, Fish remains one of the history's most extreme examples of how severe mental illness, distorted reward processing, and pathological compulsions can intersect. Number 3, Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. Los Angeles, 1980s. For more than a year, Southern California lived in fear. Residents slept with windows locked, baseball bats beside their beds, and news stations warned people to stay alert after dark. The attacker seemed impossible to predict. He targeted men and women, young and old, breaking into homes without any consistent pattern. Ramirez was ultimately convicted of 13 murders, along with numerous assaults, burglaries, and other violent crimes. Unlike many serial killers who fit a specific victim profile, his attacks often appeared completely random, making him one of the most terrifying criminals of the era. From a neurological and psychiatric perspective, experts have described Ramirez as exhibiting features consistent with antisocial personality disorder, compounded by severe childhood trauma, chronic substance abuse, and repeated head injuries. Those experiences may have affected the amygdala and prefrontal cortex, regions involved in fear processing, decision-making, and impulse control. When these circuits become impaired, empathy may diminish while impulsive and aggressive behaviors become more difficult to regulate. What stands out to me is that several of Ramirez's victims actually survived attacks that would have normally been fatal. One teenage victim survived repeated blows to the head with a tire iron, while another survived 3 gunshot wounds involving the head. If those patients came into the ER, I'd immediately be thinking about life-threatening brain injuries. Is the brain swelling? Is the airway protected? We'd activate the trauma team, stabilize the patient, get them to CT as quickly as possible, and involve neurosurgery immediately if there were signs of bleeding or elevated pressures inside the skull. In many ways, Ramirez became the modern boogeyman, proving that the greatest weapon wasn't just violence, it was fear, making millions of people wonder if they could be next. Number 2, Charles Cullen, the Angel of Death, New Jersey, 1990s to 2000s. When patients are admitted to the hospital, they place an incredible amount of trust in the people caring for them. For nearly 16 years, one of those caregivers was Charles Cullen. On the surface, he appeared quiet and compassionate. Behind the scenes, investigators believed he secretly murdered dozens and possibly hundreds of patients. Unlike many serial killers who rely on the physical violence, Cullen used something far more subtle: medicine itself. His weapons were medications like insulin and digoxin. From an emergency medicine perspective, that's what made his crimes so difficult to detect. An insulin overdose can cause profound hypoglycemia, causing seizures, coma, and eventually death if not recognized quickly. In critically ill hospitalized patients, those findings can easily resemble natural disease progression, making the true cause incredibly difficult to recognize. Psychiatrically, Cullen has been described as suffering from major depressive disorder along with dependent personality traits, but there's never been strong enough evidence that he was psychotic. Investigators believed his motivations stemmed from a distorted savior complex, claiming he wanted to relieve suffering while simultaneously exerting control over life and death. Unlike someone acting under hallucinations or delusions, Cullen appeared to understand exactly what he was doing. As an emergency physician, one of the biggest lessons from this case is that medicine depends on systems of trust, but trust must always be paired with accountability. Cullen's case remains one of the most important lessons in both medical ethics and patient safety, reminding us that knowledge and access can save countless lives, but in the wrong hands, they become extremely dangerous. Number 1, the Doctors of Death. Harold Shipman and H.H. Holmes. The most dangerous serial killers don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they wear a white coat. Doctors are among the most trusted professionals in society. Patients place their lives in our hands every single day, expecting knowledge, compassion, and healing. That's what makes these final 2 cases so chilling. The first was Dr. Harold Shipman, a respected British family physician who is believed to have murdered more than 200 patients, making him one of the deadliest serial killers in recorded history. His method was deceptively simple: administering fatal doses of morphine, then falsifying medical records to make the deaths appear natural. Opiate overdoses can cause profound respiratory depression. Patients become increasingly drowsy, breathing slows dramatically, and without rapid intervention, cardiac arrests can follow. Psychologically, investigators believe Shipman wasn't driven by hallucinations or psychosis, but by an overwhelming need for control. Some experts have suggested narcissistic personality traits and what has been described as a God complex. Decades earlier, another man blurred the line between medicine and murder. H.H. Holmes, often considered America's first serial killer, studied medicine before constructing his infamous murder castle near the 1893 Chicago World's Fair in Chicago. His medical education likely gave him a deeper understanding of human anatomy, decomposition, and the limitations of forensic investigations in the late 1800s. As physicians, we're trained to understand the human body so we can preserve life. Holmes allegedly used many of those same principles in the exact opposite way. From a forensic perspective, both Holmes and Shipman demonstrated the same unsettling truth. Medical knowledge is incredibly powerful. The anatomy, physiology, and pharmacology that physicians spend years mastering are designed to heal. But without ethics, that same knowledge can be catastrophically misused. What do you think? Are serial killers born, made, or is it a combination of both? Let me know down in the comments. Also, if you want to see a part 3, hit that like button and let me know which infamous killer you'd like me to discuss next. If you enjoyed this breakdown, binge watch the Dark Side of Medicine playlist right here. And as always, make sure you subscribe, turn on your bell notifications so you never miss an upload. Thank you so much for watching and stay healthy, my friends.